One thing we haven't spoken about is, and the book discusses this, is the history of Quranic manuscripts. What are the earliest manuscripts that we do have? What are the oldest Qur'ans that...
Yeah, so the manuscripts is a fascinating aspect, and there's a few chapters in this book about that. So funnily enough, we actually have a lot of very early manuscripts that have been preserved, and there's been a lot of work done on it. So first of all, a lot of these manuscripts were found in depositories in the various parts of the Muslim world, especially in the 1900s. So places like Damascus, the Qarawiyyin, Fustat, Sana'a. In fact, in the National Library in France, there's 250 copies or folios of the Qur'an that was found in Masjid Amr ibn al-As in Fustat. And there's hundreds of leaves, and there's a lot of work that's been done in trying to date these manuscripts. And when we talk about dating, there's two ways. You have paleography, which is the study of handwriting, and you have carbon-14 dating. So initially, there was a lot of kind of studies with paleography in order to date these manuscripts. So people would... to give an example, in the Fihris of Ibn al-Nadim, he mentions that the first style of writing the Qur'an was the Meccan script, and then he describes how the Meccan script looked like. And the Meccan script, he basically states, turned slightly to the right, the strokes were lengthened, there was a slight slant to it. That is very kind of similar and accurate to the folios that were found in Amr ibn al-As mosque. Maybe we can put it up, we can have a look on the screen, but So scholars have said this is like maybe the Hijazi script. And so that was one way, through paleography. But I would say the most kind of the prominent way now is carbon-14 dating. So carbon-14 dating is more of a scientific way of dating organic material. So the way carbon-14 dating works is that all organic things like plants and animals and human beings have a level of carbon-14 in them when they're alive. But when you die, that doesn't get replenished. And so scientists can calculate when an organic material dies about how old that thing is. Now, the earliest manuscripts, they were written on parchments, which is like sheepskin and things like this. So if we have these early manuscripts, like the one that were found in Fustat, like in Amr ibn al-As mosque, and you send it to a laboratory, you can actually measure how old these manuscripts are. And this has been done with some of the earliest manuscripts, and we have all sorts of dates, but we can quite confidently say that the earliest manuscripts are certainly from the time of the Umayyad period. So around just 20 to 50 years after the death of the Prophet. It depends. So this is the thing with carbon-14 dating. It gives you a range. It doesn't give you a date. It gives you a range of dates. So the date when that animal died, it falls between that range. And so the range is between things like 606 to 675, but very, very early.
So that would actually place it potentially at the lifetime of the Prophet or just after?
Well, yes. Yeah, and I think there's a big thing about the Birmingham manuscripts. Yeah. So here's the thing we need to bear in mind. The carbon-14 dating can only kind of say when the material, like the animal died or something, right? That doesn't mean it was written then. You know, someone could have that parchment and kept it and then wrote it afterwards. And this actually links to the Sana'a manuscripts. I think this is something to just quickly talk about.
So just quickly, is the Sana'a manuscript seen as older than the Birmingham manuscript, or is the Birmingham one the oldest?
So when the Birmingham one was dated, it was dated as being older, and that's what caused a lot of kind of excitement and things like this. But I think I would probably say the Sana'a manuscripts are probably the oldest. And let me explain why. Okay, so here's what we need to understand about the Sana'a manuscripts. The Sana'a manuscripts are not one reading of the Qur'an, there are two. The Sana'a manuscripts are... So what happened was, in 1972, there was some renovation that happened in the Grand Mosque of Sana'a, and a stack of materials, parchments were found. And then there were scholars that looked at these parchments, and they found that these were very old copies of the Qur'an. That in itself isn't significant because we have it in other regions of the Muslim world. What was significant was that there were two layers. There was an underlayer which had been rubbed out, and after that had been rubbed out, an upper layer was then written over it. So there's a bottom layer of the Qur'an, and then there's an upper layer of the Qur'an. And the visible thing that you can see with the naked eye is the upper layer. But through things like using ultraviolet light, imaging processing, you can actually decipher what the bottom layer is. And that bottom layer is really kind of fascinating because, well, so the San'a manuscripts contain 40% of the Qur'an. And the reason why it's important is because every single manuscript that we have, we were talking about the Uthmanic Codex, right? Mm-hmm. Every single manuscript that we have...
Right, is it this...
This is the thing. So every manuscript that we have in existence, bar none, follows this Uthmanic archetype, except for the bottom layer of the San'a manuscript. Yeah, so there are orthography in the bottom layer of the San'a manuscript that is not in accord with every other manuscript, which just makes it so fascinating.
So, I mean, that almost follows that kind of traditional narrative to a T.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, absolutely.
So the other kind of versions were destroyed.
Destroyed.
Or in this instance, maybe written over.
Written over, yeah. I mean, so it's known as a palimpsest. It's not unusual because parchment's very expensive. So you can imagine the effort that's involved in making a parchment, and why would you just discard it? So you can rub everything out and just rewrite on top of it.
I appreciate the paper that you have today.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, definitely. The jury's a bit out as to what's happening here. Like, what is the lower level? Like, is this a codex of a companion? There are scholars that have said that it was a writing school. So, for example, that's why you have discrepancies.
Because you need to practice,
You need to practice, exactly. Right. So, was it that they were writing it and then they rubbed it out and then wrote it, like the more correct version on top? Interesting enough, the reason I say that is because in Surah Tawbah, we know that the Basmala isn't recited. Mm-hmm. But in the lower level of the San'a manuscript, it says, La taqul, don't say. So it's like an instruction or something like this. So I believe Asma Hilali kind of postulates, is it like a writing school or something like this?
Because again, these are things that people take for granted, that actually you needed people to be trained on how to write and preserve the Qur'an.
Yeah, exactly. So that's one, and some say it could be the codices. And by the way, you know, the lower text of the San'a manuscripts is in accord with what classical narrations say was the reading of people like Ibn Mas'ud. So just to give you an example, right? In Surah Yusuf, وَقَالَ نِسْوَةٌ فِي الْمَدِينَةِ. In the lower text of the San'a manuscript, there's an addition of min ahl. So instead of niswatun fil Medina, it's niswatun min ahli al-Medina. Now that min ahl is not going to be accommodated in an Uthmanic orthography because that's an entire word that's been added. It's not just dots, it's an actual word. Other examples could be things that might not be there. So for example, قال رب إني وحن العظم مني واشتعل الرأس شيبة. In the San'a undertext, it's وقال رب اشتعل الرأس شيبة. So there's something missing there. إنا منتظرون. There's an additional in the undertext. إنا معكم منتظرون. Or there's other ones like instead of من بعد ما جاءتكم البينات, in the San'a underlayer, it's من بعد ما جاءتكم الهدى. So these are quite significant different words, and some of these actually do coincidize with what the traditional narratives say were the codices of. But the thing is, this is with the past. We don't 100% know. We can only try our best to try and reconstruct what we can.
And this is again, the book looks at this.
Yeah. So there's chapters in that. The first two chapters go into a lot of detail with some really great scholars that look into this as well.